Order now at mypatriotsupply.com to get a complimentary expansion battery, a $1,200 value, free with your order. This is a limited time offer. Go to mypatriotsupply.com to get your solar generator today. That's mypatriotsupply.com.
Are you paying too much for term life insurance? A man age 50 non-tobacco user can obtain $500,000 of coverage for as little as $110 per month. Level rate for 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rate for 20 years. If you're a smoker, there are great rates available for you as well. Call Term Busters for a quote. 1-800-908-7636. You're probably paying more than you should. Call 1-800-908-7636. Remember, call Term Busters. 1-800-908-7636. Sample rate for preferred non-tobacco rate class. Exam required to qualify.
Are you a parent of a 2 to 8 year old? Listen closely for an exciting offer, then head to abcmouse.com/radio to learn more. By now, you've probably heard of ABC Mouse.
ABC Mouse is like a little one-on-one teacher. It has helped her so much.
We're offering a promo at abcmouse.com/radio to try it for free for a month, then $14.99 per month until canceled. Go to abcmouse.com/radio to see this offer. That's abcmouse.com/radio. Actual ABC Mouse users compensated for their testimonials, sponsored by Age of Learning.
This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275CM FM. Concord, Boston, the Money Matters Radio Network.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and our guide this month is titled Inflation and Your Retirement Plan. Mike, why is it so important for retirees to account for inflation in their planning?
Yeah, massively important, and I think any retiree over any course of history will tell you that. And when you experience inflation, when you're on a fixed income, it's tremendously difficult. But even small changes in the rate of inflation, or seemingly small ones, can really lead to massive changes. For example, if you're facing 2% inflation, that means that prices roughly double every 35 years. If you're looking at 4% inflation instead, those same prices double only in 17 years. A huge huge change to your budget.
And obviously, this also then influences, your overall spending habits and your withdrawal rate over time. These are things that you have to account for in your planning. You can't just assume that you're going to necessarily see the same kind of inflation that you've seen previously in retirement.
Yeah, look, I think generally speaking, over the course of the last 20 years, while there have been massive drawdowns in equities, the inflation figure has remained relatively stable. If you're worried about something that could look different from that over the course of the next 20 years, then it's important to really consider what that would mean for you.
Our guide this month is titled Inflation and Your Retirement Plan, and there are two ways you can request it. The first is by calling 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com. That phone number again is 800-393-4001, or request the guide online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
This is Michael Valila, adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We pride ourselves on being able to support veterans in their time of greatest need, ensuring they receive the protections they deserve. For over 100 years, the DAV of Massachusetts has helped thousands of veterans with housing, transportation, and medical assistance, and you can help too. Please visit dav5k.boston and make a donation today. That's dav5k.boston.
The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane.
Good morning. Welcome to the Financial Exchange. It's the Tuesday after a long weekend. Tucker looks especially sleepy this Tuesday. He had a rough wake up at 4:30 a.m. or whatever time he has to get here. I'm not entirely sure, Tucker, what time you actually wake up and get here, but
no one cares.
Suffice to say, hours and hours before I do. Hope everyone had a nice long weekend. Doing whatever they do with their families. I was celebrating my girl's birthday this weekend, so we had a nice big party with a bunch of screaming 8-year-old girls. It was lovely. We are kicking off September here with a busy schedule. Congress is going back into session after being out for how long? 5 weeks, something along those lines. We've got a looming government shutdown that, from most experts that I listen to, they're pricing in like a 1 in 4 chance of a shutdown. They need to get a bill passed by September 30th in order to keep the government open. We have a jobs report coming up this Friday. We have a Fed meeting midway through the month. And then all of that surrounds the late breaking news that we got on Friday afternoon from a federal appeals court, this being the second court to now rule against the Trump administration when it comes to their powers on tariffs. So a lot to cover today, but I figured we'd start with, this is a business and markets show, just start with the topic of dreaded September, right? Because it is, everyone that looks at it knows that it is the worst month historically for stock market performance. Any way you look at it, it is significantly worse than every other month. I have data here that was put together going back to 1927. So it's not the S&P 500. It's more of a large cap stock index that pretty closely mirrors the S&P 500. And the average monthly return for September, going back to that time period, this is through 2024, was negative 0.9%. every other month of the year is positive, and the lowest positive month that you get from any other month is February at positive 0.4%. So it is pretty staggering just how bad September has historically been. But with statistics, there's all sorts of ways to manipulate it. And it's definitely true that this is very much defined by a few very bad Septembers that have been out there. Sure. Right? We had a negative 9%, I think, during the Great Recession, and many other periods of time where September proved to be pretty bad. But so what I did here is, okay, yes, average, it's pretty bad, but would you bet on something like that, right? Is this worth betting on? And so I also took a look at just how frequently September's bad. And just looked at, okay, give me a ratio. How often is it actually negative? And September is a coin toss, in fact. While the average is pretty bad, it's only a coin toss as to whether or not it'll be positive or negative. And so I think most people would take that bet all day, right? You're still better off than going to the casino with odds like that. But it is just staggering because, once again, you go take a look at any other month out there. February, again, is the second worst out there. But even there, it's pretty statistically significant to the upside. And so we do head into September. There is a lot on the table. We've got these tariffs being challenged in court. We've got a looming government shutdown. We're also looking at a stock market today that, by at least one measure, is the most expensive we have ever had. And yet, we will see what happens here, because only historically half the time do markets actually go down in September. And I don't feel that piece of the pie gets
How does that compare
about.
to other months? Do you have the other months?
You want me to go one by one here? How do you want to tackle it? I mean, the best month historically for performance is December, up more than 3/4 of the time.
Got it. Okay.
February is up like 56% of the time. So
anywhere from 60 to 75 on some of those other months.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, as bad as September is, December is by far the best, up 76.5% of the time historically.
Got it.
And very infrequently do markets actually move down. But again, this measure doesn't tell you anything about the size of the move. It could be up by barely 0.1%, and it counts towards the positive. But that piece, that piece of September being bad is just like sell in May and go away. I've never found it to be terribly helpful information, because what this points out to you is, okay, yeah, if you sold every September going back to 100 years, which no one's been investing for 100 years, then you would have missed out on some pretty ugly moments. But if I'm sitting here now on the first trading day of September and trying to decide what do I do with my money, well, it's a coin toss as to whether I'm going to earn money this month based on the historical averages. So what do I do with that information? I guess the overall bet is don't try and fight the market, because the market usually, just like the house market, usually returns positive for you over the long term.
Sure.
So where do you want to start, Paul? Because there is a fair bit to get to. I guess the most significant would be we do have that jobs report coming in on Friday of this week. And so let's start there before we go on to the craziness in the courts and what's going to happen next on trade. We have a jobs report expected for Friday of this week. What I find remarkable is just how stable the labor market has been over the course of the last year. You have basically not moved more than 0.1 of a percentage point on the unemployment rate. It's been sitting there right around 4.2%. The biggest news that we have right now when it comes to jobs were the revisions that were made resulting in the firing of the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where it basically was shown during the spring months here that we created very few jobs. The unemployment rate didn't really tick up for a number of other factors that we can talk about, but we created very few jobs over the course of, I think it was April, May, and June. And so the question becomes, hey, we saw some decent numbers in July, but are companies now feeling stable enough after the admitted craziness of the spring with tariff uncertainty and all sorts of question marks about rates and where things were going? Are we settling into an equilibrium now where companies do feel comfortable hiring? They understand what the new tax package looks like and how quickly they can deduct some expenses when it comes to hiring and research and development, and just saying, let's power through with whatever hiring plans we put on hold earlier this spring.
Yeah, Jay Powell in his recent speech in Jackson Hole, the reason why markets had jumped so enthusiastically, what was that, last
Yeah, I think it was a week and a half ago.
And a half ago, was mentioning that they may cut interest rates in the month of September. And the reason that he mentioned that was a weakness in the labor market, a potential weakness in the labor market. And really that's why this report will be so critical, is because, like you mentioned, we'd had significant revisions to May, June, and July's numbers were pretty light too in terms of jobs that were created. But really the focus here coming up for Friday is last summer we were heading into a fall where the unemployment rate was sitting around 3.5%. We saw it ticking up by more than 0.5%, and there was this concern that typically with labor markets that they don't just move and plateau somewhere. It kind of becomes a snowball effect and continues to sort of bleed over. What happened, just like we were talking about before on coin tosses, it did plateau. The unemployment rate has plateaued at 4.2% or in and around that level for really the last year or so, minimizing the concerns that we had in the fall last year. Where we sit today, a similar position in this idea that you hear a lot of sentiment conversation about this idea that new graduates had a lot of difficulty in May and still continue to have a lot of trouble finding new work. You also have the labor supply piece that's being disputed a lot, that perhaps some of these crackdowns on immigration is leading to just a lesser population of workers available. And perhaps that is really hiding what is going on under the surface in terms of employment numbers. So any data that we can get here that points to one direction or another, weakness or strength coming up on Friday, is something that the market's going to be really focused on, because it's really this report, the labor report that we'll get on Friday the 5th, as well as the inflation report that I believe is the 10th or 11th, that are going to be the two most critical economic pieces of data that we'll get before the Federal Reserve meeting on the 16th and 17th.
It's the 11th, by the way, that inflation report. I guess, for expectations here, consensus estimate, 75,000 jobs created for the month of August, unemployment rate to tick up slightly to 4.3%. If you get anything between, I would say, 0 and 150,000 jobs created, then the Fed is going to continue right on its current trajectory. I don't think any of that stuff would move it from its current path. The interesting question to me is always, okay, how could this surprise? Well, if you get a couple 100,000 jobs created and that unemployment rate sink to 4%, those could be, obviously, if that happens, that's a great news story about the economy. It means the companies are feeling confident enough to hire again. It also means that you would have some fierce debate within the Fed as to whether or not they should be cutting rates into an environment like that. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, the breaking news from Friday afternoon surrounding President Trump's attempted tariffs. That's next here on the Financial Exchange.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Subscribe to our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network. This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte-Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com. Your retirement savings and life insurance benefits are more than numbers. They're part of the legacy you've worked hard to build. And with the right plan, you can help protect them for the people you love. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and life insurance planning, estate tax strategies, and nursing home protection shows how naming your estate the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can help reduce estate taxes and protect assets from nursing home costs, and still give your spouse access when it's needed most. It's a straightforward strategy that can provide lasting benefits for you and your family. You'll learn how this approach can fit into your overall estate plan and why it may offer more flexibility than other options. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. or request the guide online right now at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Inflation has been top of mind for years now, and for good reason. It doesn't just impact what you pay at the pump or the grocery store. Inflation can dramatically change how long your retirement savings last. Here's the reality. If prices go up 4% a year, they double in just 17 years. That means your money might not stretch as far as you think. To help you prepare, we've created a brand new guide called Inflation and Your Retirement Plan. In it, we'll discuss strategies that may protect your income, adapt your plan, and keep your lifestyle secure, even if costs keep climbing. Don't let inflation eat away at your future. Get the facts, get the guide. Take control today. Call 800-393-4001 to get your free copy. That's 800-393-4001 or request it online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served nearly 20 years, and we are so proud to have him and his business as a key partner and a presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. The DAV Department of Massachusetts does incredible work, and it's one of the first organizations that Mark became familiar with after his military service ended back in 1984. As Mark built his company, he knew he'd be giving back to fellow veterans who needed jobs, support services, medical supplies, and so much more. Mark works with disabled veterans every day, and it's one of the key reasons why he's such a big supporter of Dan Stack, the DAV Department of Massachusetts, and the DAV 5K Boston. You can join Mark Vonner and his team and make a donation to the DAV Department of Massachusetts or become a sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
This is your home for the most comprehensive coverage of the economy and the trends on Wall Street. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This year's DAV 5K is less than 3 months away, and slots are continuing to fill up fast. So if you'd like to participate, now's the time to register. The race is Saturday, November 8th at Castle Island, and you can visit dav5k.boston to sign up or to join our team, Team TFE. Your support helps fund free rides to medical appointments for veterans and the nation's first DAV-led housing initiative, providing homes for single veterans and veteran families. Go to dav5k.boston and register today.
All right, so big news of the day is, in fact, the breaking news from Friday when it came to tariffs. And I do feel as though a step back and some context is important with this because it's confusing. There's been a number of court cases surrounding it, and we're talking about a bunch of different tariffs under different rules. So first things first, the tariffs that were ruled on here specifically are what's referred to as IEEPA, IEEPA, that stands for the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. It was of 1977 and effectively allows the president to regulate international economic transactions, imports, sanctions, restrictions, etc., following the declaration of a national emergency in the United States. So that is the act under which the president has been imposing most tariffs that we've talked about on this program, whether it's Canada, Mexico, China, all of Europe, the big sweeping tariffs country by country were announced and moved on based on this power, based on this act from 1977.
And the two emergencies that have largely been cited are trade imbalance and the fentanyl crisis.
Correct. Those are the two. And that's been a lot of the tariffs that we've been discussing. Separately, the president has been using pretty well-established powers that many presidents have used around national defense and other sections in order to Sorry, my
Was that
watch just started yelling at me. Problems that we didn't have 10 years ago.
I thought Tucker was piping in some music.
Separately, tariffs on things like steel, aluminum, autos, and auto parts are more national security. Those are pretty well established and a process that the president has used. That many other presidents have used in the past.
He used it in 2018.
And President Biden did. Yep. Many others have used that process. So what has been ruled on Friday is the second court panel to rule against the administration. The first time they did so was May 28th of this year. The U.S. Court of International Trade, in that case, ruled that the tariffs were illegal because the declared emergency lacked a rational connection to the imposed trade measures. Basically, you're saying it's a fentanyl crisis, but there's no attachment from that to the tariff rate that you used country by country. This time, a full federal court of appeals heard the case, and they've been hearing it now for the last month or more, and this 11-judge panel ruled 7-4 that these tariffs are illegal. They put a deadline here for October 14th, which, who knows, that could be extended, to give the White House time to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, because that is ultimately where this was always going to land in all likelihood, and where the president and his advisors wanted it to land initially.
So the tariffs are going to stay in place until October 14th.
At least until October
That's
14th.
Worth mentioning.
So a lot of context here. First thing, quote from President Trump: "If a radical left court is allowed to terminate these tariffs, almost all of this investment and much more will be immediately canceled." So let's briefly talk about that. I mean, the makeup of this court is definitely different than the U.S. Supreme Court, and this is not trying to get political at all. You talk about appointments from Republicans versus Democrats on the U.S. Supreme Court. Different leaning here, presumably. The 11-judge panel consisted of 5 Obama appointees, 2 Biden appointees, 1 Clinton appointee, 2 Bush appointees, and 1 Reagan appointee. So 0 Trump appointees on this 11-judge panel. In addition, I guess what would contradict the political piece of this, though, is that in terms of the 7-4 vote breakdown, the 4 who voted in favor were comprised of 2 Obama appointees and 2 Bush appointees. Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm not sure what that really reads in terms of how the U.S. Supreme Court goes on this, but I guess I would say there's been a lot of deference to executive power by the U.S. Supreme Court over the course of the last few years, and so in spite of where this went, I guess I wouldn't be shocked if the Supreme Court upheld the president's goals here, or largely upheld them when it comes to tariffs. But let's play we kind of know what that looks like, right? If they uphold it, it's status quo. We know what the tariffs have been generating in revenue. We know how countries and companies have been reacting. I suppose if the U.S. Supreme Court upholds it, there is probably more likelihood of companies finally raising prices, because we'll cover it later, but I get the sense that a lot of companies have been hesitant to do so with the looming threat of these lawsuits ongoing. But let's say the U.S. Supreme Court actually goes in the other direction and overturns this. We don't have time to get into all of it, but a lot of things change immediately, and the bond market's kind of reacting to one of those significant changes this morning, I think.
Yeah, one of the big issues that you'd have is this idea that you'd have to refund all of the tariffs that were collected over the last, 5 months or so, over $100 billion, and that number just keeps rising as the months tick along. So that is extremely a headache to even try and figure out how that would unfold. And then you do have, from a geopolitical standpoint, it is a bit of egg on face for the United States. I mean, it's diplomatic foreign embarrassment is mentioned. I think that was Letnitz's quote on it. And there's no question about it. It would just be incredibly confusing and a circuitous roundabout to get nowhere if that were the case from an economic policy perspective.
So on the yield side of things, again, on the idea that a whole bunch of cash would need to go from the U.S. Treasury back to corporations who have paid tariffs, you do have yields moving up a little bit in early trading. You did have the 30-year Treasury, for example, touch 4.97%. It's come down a little bit, but even the more oftenly quoted 10-year Treasuries are moving up about 0.04% right now. After it's been kind of falling over the course of the last month, you've seen mortgage rates, et cetera, come down. That's been one immediate effect of this court ruling, is some investors saying, hey, what exactly is going to happen next when it comes to these tariffs, and what would it mean for companies to suddenly get a huge refund of tariff fees that they have, tariff taxes, whatever you want to call them, tariffs that they have been paying to the U.S. Treasury over the course of the last 5 months. So a lot to be worked out here. We'll be continuing to cover this story kind of throughout the show because it permeates into just about every corporate decision that's being made right now. But we got to take a quick break. Wall Street Watch is coming up next.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @TFE Show. Breaking business news is always first, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. One of the biggest risks to retirement isn't just market volatility, it's longevity. People are living 25 to 30 years after they stop working, and that gives inflation plenty of time to work against you. At just 3% inflation, your expenses double in about 23 years. Add to that the fact that healthcare costs typically rise faster than general inflation, and your later years could be your most expensive. Without a plan, that combination can put real pressure on your savings. That's why we've put together a brand new guide called Inflation in Your Retirement Plan. The guide shows you ways to balance longevity risk with rising costs and strategies that may help you make your money last through decades of retirement. Call 800-393-4001 to get your free copy today. 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
This is Tucker Silva with the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke, a partner with the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with a master's in taxation. And today we're talking about choosing beneficiaries for your IRA. Todd, what is the best way to deal with qualified retirement plan assets, and can they be transferred to these irrevocable Medicaid trusts?
So this is a tough asset in general. When you're dealing with retirement plan assets, it's difficult from an estate planning standpoint or a Medicaid planning standpoint to deal with them. Why? Because they have both an income tax component and an estate tax component, right? They're taxable when you take them out, and when you die, they're subject to your estate tax. So the general way to do this would be, one, you can name the spouse as the beneficiary of the IRA, or
you can name the kids the beneficiary of the IRA, or sometimes you can name the trust the beneficiary or the estate the beneficiary. But it all depends on the size of your estate, the size of the IRA. But the one thing you really can't do is you can't take the asset and transfer it to the irrevocable trust or revocable trust while you're living. Otherwise, it will create a income taxable event. So tough to plan for those in advance unless you name the estate the beneficiary.
Educate yourself about the estate planning process. Request your free copy of Todd's brand new guide called Why Name Your Estate an IRA Beneficiary right now by calling 866-848-5699. That's 848-5699, or you can request a copy from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Time now for Wall Street Watch, a complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Well, September is upon us, and markets today are selling off amid more tariff confusion after an appeals court struck down the Trump administration's reciprocal tariffs late last week. Investors are also awaiting a court ruling on whether Trump's bid to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook is legitimate. On top of all that, we have a jobs report later this week. Right now, the Dow is off by 0.6% or 277 points lower. S&P 500 down over 0.8% or 53 points lower. And the Nasdaq down by about 0.9% or 191 points lower. Russell 2000 is down by 0.6%. 10-year Treasury yield up 3 basis points today at 4.265%. And crude oil up about 1.5% higher, trading right at $65 a barrel. According to the Wall Street Journal, activist investor Elliott Investment Management has built a roughly $4 billion stake in Pepsi and plans to push the beverage and snacks company to make changes to boost its sagging share price. Pepsi's market value has shrunk to about $200 billion, a more than 25% drop from a peak of $270 billion back in May of 2023. Pepsi shares are up by 2% today. Meanwhile, Kraft Heinz confirmed earlier reports that it would split into 2 publicly traded companies through a tax-free spinoff. Berkshire Hathaway's Warren Buffett told CNBC this morning that he is disappointed in the Kraft Heinz split, as Berkshire was behind the merger back in 2015. Kraft shares are down by 5%. Elsewhere, shares in Signet Jewelers are up nearly 1% after it reported better than expected second quarter results and also upped its full year earnings guidance. Constellation Brands retreating 6% after the Modelo and Corona beer brewer cut its full year guidance, and shares in gold miner Newmont climbing 1% after the precious metal hit a fresh record high. I'm Tucker Silva, and that is Wall Street Watch.
By the way, Paul, one more thing on the court that ruled against the Trump administration when it came to the tariffs. It's usually a 12-judge panel. Do you know why it was only 11 who ruled on it?
Yes, there was a 98-year-old who's still fighting to be able to be in the mix and has to go over a cognitive assessment before she can get back on.
And refused to participate in the cognitive assessment in her neurological test. I'm laughing a little bit. It's not funny. There shouldn't probably be a 98-year-old sitting on a federal court of appeals panel would be my personal opinion. I'm sure others have different opinions, but I do like to see when things are actually working properly. Like, okay, yeah, you're refusing to step down, you're refusing to be assessed by this. We're at least not going to allow you to rule on big cases like whether or not tariffs can exist. I like that. I like that approach of, okay, we won't make you resign, but you can't do your job either until you actually get your neurological assessment as a 98-year-old. That seems very reasonable.
Even Buffett is stepping down at the end of this year at 95.
Right. So, I get that there are no terms for these types of judges, but it may be some important things here, like neurological tests, are proving to play out properly. So I want to stay on the topic of trade for a moment here, because this is Not earth-shattering. Earth-shattering would be the Supreme Court overruling the Trump administration on this, but it does change the name of the game once again a little bit when it comes to tariffs. So I want to think of this both in part of our trade partners, so foreign countries and their negotiations with the Trump administration, as well as from a U.S. corporate perspective. Where do you want to start, Paul?
Let's start on the corporate side of things.
Yeah,
first.
so these companies who are subject to importing, and, some are, some aren't. Like Meta is not really affected by this one way or another. And in fact, you could make a pretty good argument that most of the Magnificent Seven is not really affected by this at all. Amazon to some degree, but they're really just passing through any of those costs to sellers on their page rather than them being subject to it themselves.
Potentially you can make the argument on Meta and Google, they derive most of their revenue from advertising, that perhaps as a result of this cut back on ad budgets. But
it's
not direct impact.
It's not direct impact. And so, but let's take the perspective of, grocers and any big
Walmart,
company
Target.
out there. How do they approach all of this? And I think it really divides out between a large company and a small company. Because if I'm a big company like Walmart right now, I am probably doing everything I can to just manage the cost of these tariffs, even if it means losing money on certain products for a short period of time. I want to probably hold the line, gain market share, and stand out even more compared to the big lots and those other smaller retailers that can't afford to do that. Because you know what? I'm paying all these tariffs, and if I'm Walmart, I at least have to be saying, okay, maybe a 25% chance all of these get reimbursed to me at some point, and I've got the cash to be able to do this. Why not?
Right.
Right, like 1 in 4, 1 in 5. What are the odds that happens? I don't know how to price that, but certainly somebody in the executive team there is saying, okay, we're going to pay these tariffs, we're not going to raise prices, and we're going to cross our fingers, and maybe we get them all reimbursed to us later this year.
And I think it's a little bit of a balancing act that, we'll pick up and eat some of the costs on some of these tariffs, but I was talking with someone over the weekend who had worked on the board at Deckers, the shoe brand company,
Sure.
and I was asking, no longer as active, but I was just asking, what are they doing from a business perspective? And he was saying that 20 million of their shoes get imported from Vietnam. And I said, well, who's paying for the import? He's like, they're sticking it a lot on the supplier right now. The supplier is eating a lot of that tariff cost because of the negotiating power that they have. Hey, it's 20 million shoes of volume, we'll find elsewhere. And I think that to a degree, Walmart and others are doing the same thing. Yeah, maybe they're eating some, but they're also telling the supplier that, hey, we give you so much volume on a yearly basis that
Find a way to make it
work. But the point that he made to me, he said the longer this goes on, though, that's not going to happen. The suppliers or Walmart to the same degree, and this is a point that's been made by many people out there, you get 6 months past this, you can't do that balancing act anymore. So for the bigger companies, to your point, their leverage and scale, you can lean on that or you can lean hard on suppliers. The problem is when you're a small to mid-sized business, and that's what I worry about with these tariffs in general, is that does just too much of the value accrete to these large players, that the Walmart and Targets of the world have a easier ability to not increase their prices as much because they have bigger muscles to flex in terms of supply chain diversification. Or
and I'm not
just
even
pressure.
talking about tiny companies, right? Like I think about Five Below.
Mm-hmm.
I think about there was just a really discount off-brand retailer right around here that declared bankruptcy a few months ago. I think I got rejected by the judge. I don't remember the name of it. At Home, these other retailers that import everything they sell and do not have the deep pockets of Walmart probably have little choice but to say, I mean, the choices that they do have, try and go raise money. Borrow a bunch of money and hope that you get your tariffs reimbursed and you can pay back that loan. You can raise prices. Mm-hmm. You can try and disrupt your supply chain in some meaningful way, but good luck.
Takes years.
So is everybody else right now. And so I think about these other companies, and the net result that I can view is I don't see bankruptcies across the board, but I can see a case where the giant guys, Costco, Walmart,
just get
Target to a lesser degree, get stronger, get more market share, and are left in a better operating position. Whereas, forget about your mom and pop. Like those guys are no choice. They have to raise prices, and hopefully they have more pricing power than Walmart would to be able to, stay in their communities and be those small businesses. I just think of all the, go drive down through downtown Needham where we broadcast our show for. There's, 8 or 9 of these knick-knack type stores with clothing and collectibles and all sorts of stuff. Maybe not collectibles, but you know what I'm talking about, like gift stores of some sort or another that probably import most of their stuff. You have no choice. You raise prices right away because you're not carrying $15 billion worth of cash on your balance sheet to go pay the tariffs and then hope that they get reimbursed down the road.
Yeah, but this Wall Street Journal piece highlights, a company that makes copper tubs out of North Carolina. Just another example of a smaller mid-sized business where they're selling into Home Depot and Lowe's, and they don't have the ability to really. There's this tug of war that Home Depot and Lowe's don't really want to increase prices that much. So you leave this smaller company in a very precarious position where their biggest buyer is probably Home Depot and Lowe's, and all of a sudden they're in a very tough margin spot with that.
When it comes to other countries and their negotiations with the United States, I think all you hear for the next several months is delay, delay, delay.
Yes.
They won't say that publicly, obviously, because then you're going to get a whole bunch of backlash from the Trump administration. But if you are the Canadian negotiators or the European negotiators right now, you're not going to sign some sort of tariff deal that you then have to put through your own Congress to get signed and approved. Remember that most of these other countries are not negotiating these things with the same emergency powers that the Trump administration is. So anything they sign has to go back through their legislature. And so I think we see more of what we saw from India, what we've seen from many other countries here, where there's not a lot being said. There's occasional outbursts here and there. There's occasional announcements here and there. But generally speaking, a lot of them, I think, are going to be looking at this and saying, okay, pay whatever we have to pay for now, deal with whatever backlash we have to deal with, but do not execute an agreement until we know that the administration actually has the power to impose these tariffs over the next few years, because it's very much in question this morning in a way that it was not so much on Friday morning.
Yeah, and I don't think we really know what the timeline is for that, right? We have to decide whether the Supreme Court will hear the case.
Well, whether they hear it as an emergency.
Yep.
Or could this be on the 2026 docket?
Right.
Big unanswered questions. And then what happens with the imposition and collection of the tariffs in the meantime if they do say, no, we're not hearing this until 2026? Huge unanswered questions here. We've got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk more about that upcoming Fed meeting. We've got the continued stories being written about the Fed's independence and what it means. That's next here on the Financial Exchange.
Text us 617-362-1385 with your comments and questions about today's show, and let us know what you think about the stories we're covering. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Are you wondering where the economy is headed? GDP is growing, but tariffs, inflation, and job numbers are making headlines. Interest rates, housing costs, and policy changes are impacting all of us. Even AI is changing how markets move. Hi, this is Chuck Zodda from the Armstrong Advisory Group. We're hosting 2 financial seminars this fall to help you make sense of it all. Join us at Margaritaville Resort, Cape Cod on October 9th or at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. To reserve your seat, call 800-393-4001. We'll break down the economic trends, market risks, and smart strategies you need to plan for retirement and beyond. Diversification, preparation, and smart decisions are several of the keys to navigating uncertainty. Register today by calling 800-393-4001 or on our website, armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Your retirement savings and life insurance benefits are more than numbers. They're part of the legacy you've worked hard to build. And with the right plan, you can help protect them for the people you love. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and life insurance planning, estate tax strategies, and nursing home protection shows how naming your estate the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can help reduce estate taxes and protect assets from nursing home costs, and still give your spouse access when it's needed most. It's a straightforward strategy that can provide lasting benefits for you and your family. You'll learn how this approach can fit into your overall estate plan and why it may offer more flexibility than other options. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. or request the guide online right now at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Here at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we are committed to all students not only attending, but succeeding at school. Your presence is powerful. Share why you attend at doe.mass.edu.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Let's talk LDL. AKA bad cholesterol. The higher your LDL cholesterol, the higher your risk of a heart attack or stroke. Your health matters. Know your number. Talk to your doctor and get your cholesterol checked. And learn how to help lower your LDL bad cholesterol. Because your health is in your hands. Find out more at heart.org/LDL.
Breaking business and financial news first throughout the day. Only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
So taking a back seat to all of the tariff uncertainty is the uncertainty at the Federal Reserve right now. But a few things have happened over the course of the last few days. One, just to update folks, the president has moved to fire sitting Fed Governor Lisa Cook. This is over allegations of mortgage fraud that was allegedly committed in the 2021-2022 timeframe. Cook has now sued to block her removal. There's been an open letter from, I think, 250 professional economists basically writing in favor of Lisa Cook and discouraging the president from taking this action. I've made my opinion on this pretty clear. Like, if she actually did this, I do think she should resign. I also think it's a pretty open question as to whether or not the president has the right to remove her over something like this. I think those are two different things. Like, you commit mortgage fraud and your job, at least in part, is to oversee banks. You shouldn't be there, and you probably wouldn't have passed through Senate confirmation had they known about this stuff at the time. But a separate question is, can the president remove somebody for something like this if the allegations end up even being true? I think that piece is all open question to me.
And the crux of it is her declaring she had two primary residences.
Yeah. To get cheaper mortgage rates, which is so dumb for anybody to do. Don't do that. And definitely don't do that if you are on the cusp of a Senate confirmation hearing.
Right.
I don't know if she was appointed at the time, et cetera, et cetera. The bigger question to me, though, is let's assume that the president's successful and he can remove her for this cause. It would seem to me to be a pretty easy line then to say, well, why can't I fire Powell for his misconduct when it comes to overseeing this building project or his failure to prevent 9% inflation in 2022? I know that this is a crime that she's being accused of and the other stuff is not, but that's the concern by legal experts is, okay, well, where is that line and will it be definitively drawn by the courts if President Trump is successful in removing Cook? Will they really define, like, yeah, this is cause and this is not cause? And my guess would be no. Generally, courts don't do that. They generally say, yeah, this time it was, and we'll let you know next time. And that would leave a fair bit of uncertainty out there when it comes to what's next for the Federal Reserve and its voting members.
This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sun set over turquoise waters? Well, the U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then explore Charlotte Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Fare to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport is required for U.S. citizens and no money to exchange. Paradise is closer than you think, so why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean, the U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Paul, we were just talking about the Fed, its independence, the president's ability to remove sitting governors of the Fed. I want to talk about why we think it matters, right? Like, for most people listening, I have to imagine you're listening right now and saying, so what?
Yeah.
I wasn't affected when he removed the Commerce Secretary. Why do I care if he's able to remove a sitting Fed governor? So let's spend a couple minutes on that because it is important. The Fed is different. And what I will just briefly say is that every president, Republican or Democrat, if they actually are pinned down and asked, would want lower rates.
Yes.
Just plain and simple. You want lower interest rates if you are the sitting president because it makes it more likely that stocks could rally. It makes it easier for business to take place. It makes it easier for people to purchase homes with cheaper mortgage rates. You want lower interest rates even if inflation is, getting out of control because you just don't know where it's going to go next. And the one thing you know is that if interest rates come down, historically, a lot of things have done pretty well in terms of asset prices.
Lower borrowing costs equals more consumption. More consumption equals more economic growth, all positives for anyone in office.
So we've pretty much established that any president would want lower interest rates. The problem is that's not always appropriate. And the reason that the Fed is successful, or at least has been in modern history at combating inflation, with some pretty big, caveats, 2022 being one of them, the 1970s being another, is that they have this threat of we don't care who the president is, we don't care when the elections are going to be, we are independent from all of that, and if we need to, we will send this economy into such a disastrous recession that we won't have to worry about inflation anymore.
Right.
That's the threat. That's the underpinning threat of the Fed is if inflation gets out of control, then we're going to basically make a bunch of people unemployed, put a bunch of businesses out of business in order to control that inflation environment. And the mere threat of them being able to do so is usually enough to control inflation.
Right. Important to note, like you said, 2 main responsibilities of the Fed: controlling and dictating monetary policy, keep inflation low, and keeping unemployment low. That's what their job is. And to your point, sometimes they have to be the one that takes away the punch bowl at the party and be the bearer of bad news or take steps to really weaken the economy.
Without that independence, you remove some of that safety net of somebody willing to take away the punch bowl, and the concern would be runaway inflation and all sorts of other big issues for the economy. Quick break, but a lot more to cover in the second hour. We'll be right back.
Are you over the age of 50? Want peace of mind and financial security for your family? Here's an important message to you from Senior Care USA. The average funeral now costs over $10,000. That leaves your loved ones the burden of paying your debts and funeral costs. Our plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay your family up to $30,000 to help pay for your funeral and other expenses. There are no medical exams. Your rates will never increase, and your plan cannot be canceled, regardless of of your medical conditions as long as you make your premium payments. Get up to $30,000 in final expense insurance. Call now for free information. Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone in just a few minutes. Call right now.
Call 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. That's 800-378-3818.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much. And they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line now. It's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense. Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
This is the Money Matters Radio Network. WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM FM. Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, the grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte-Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan is called IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies and Nursing Home Protection. Learn how naming your estate a beneficiary can reduce estate taxes, protect assets from nursing home costs, and avoid the 5-year Medicaid waiting period. Call 866-848-5699 to get your free guide today, or request it online at legalexchangeshow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we've got a guide available this month on the topic of inflation and your retirement plan. Mike, a lot of people listening might be familiar with the idea of the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, but rare is it that we find someone whose own personal rate of inflation exactly matches the CPI consistently.
Of course, we all have different spending habits. We all live in different parts of the country and have different effects of inflation. But I think a great example here, Chuck, is during a large portion of the 2010s decade, CPI was relatively in control and people got very little in the way of increases on their Social Security. However, healthcare inflation was pretty hot, and Medicare prices went up pretty dramatically during that period of time. And that is one area that dramatically affects retirees that doesn't play into CPI all that much and resulted in people seeing their Social Securities just not growing a whole lot during that 2010 decade. And so you really do have to evaluate the risk of, hey, here are my spending categories, and how might things like changes to the labor market or changes to energy markets, if I live here in the Northeast and I can't get natural gas and I'm instead relying on oil prices, how could those changes really affect my future finances?
Folks, our guide this month is titled Inflation and Your Retirement Plan, and the way to request it is by calling 800-393-4001. You can also request it online at armstrongadvisory.com. The guide again is Inflation and Your Retirement Plan, and that phone number to call is 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Mike Armstrong and Paul Lane.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Financial Exchange. It is the first day of trading for the month of September, the historically worst month for stocks out there, living up to its name this morning as we've got a broad-based risk-off sell-off today with the NASDAQ off 1.4%, the S&P off 1.2%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average off 0.9% in early trading here. Bond yields moving up as well. You've got the 30-year topping 4.97%, the 10-year Treasury yield up by almost 0.05%, so sitting now at 4.273%. Oil prices are jumping as well on something about Russia, probably 1.8% to the upside there. And gold moving up some 1.7% on probably some uncertainty news. The big story of the day was Friday's federal court ruling against the Trump administration's use of tariffs under IEEPA. This 7-4 ruling sets things up for a likely appeal to the United States Supreme Court. Perhaps the administration already has appealed, I'm not certain. But 7 justices ruling against the White House and their use of emergency powers, effectively calling into question the Trump administration's ability to implement and maintain the majority of tariffs that they have put out there. This does not call into question tariffs on things like steel and aluminum or autos, but very much calls into question country-specific tariffs under the emergency powers of fentanyl and trade imbalance. So, like we said, likely headed for the Supreme Court. The federal appeals court that did rule on this put a stay in here until October 14th to allow time for that appeal. But we will see what lands next. And in the meantime, just a whole bunch of uncertainty about what you do. And it really does call into question a whole bunch of other things that we will be facing down for this month of September. Obviously, we've got the jobs report coming Friday, which is already baked. The inflation report coming the week after, which is also already measured and taken care of. But you think about the Federal Reserve meeting that you have coming up. Okay, if I'm Jay Powell and trying to orchestrate the next move, I probably don't move on my stance that interest rates should be lower here, but you do have to suddenly acknowledge that, yeah, if the White House, if the Treasury needs to reimburse, how much has been collected in tariffs so far? It's
over hundreds of billions of dollars, yeah.
If they have to suddenly reimburse to U.S. companies hundreds of billions of dollars, very much calls into question what that inflation environment could look like. What the hiring environment would look like on the heels of that. What do I do as a company if I'm suddenly given billions of dollars that I thought was previously tax out the door? Big questions about how all of this plays out, and I'm sure will be discussed at that next Fed meeting. But we will see. A lot of uncertainty now, both in terms of the current tariffs that are being collected and will continue to be collected for the time being, as well as future negotiations that foreign countries will engage in with the trade officials in the White House. It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to drive a hard bargain with these countries when you feel like you've got your hands tied behind your back, and I'm sure that's how some of the negotiators feel right now is, hey, yeah, let's put all these plans in place and just hope that the Supreme Court goes along with us on this, because I don't know why you would negotiate in good faith if you're India right now. I wouldn't.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
Allison Schrager for Bloomberg writes, how can an economy this good feel this bad? So, Paul, lay out for me, why is the economy good according to the numbers right now? I would agree. Like, the numbers are proving pretty solid for this economy right now, but what arguments does she lay out?
This has been really the issue for the last 5 years, Mike. We've talked about where the S&P 500 is up more than 140% from the end of the recession that we saw during that COVID range. We've got unemployment that has remained about 4.5% since 2021. You've had GDP growth for the Q2 of this year that just came in at 3.3%. You've had strong economic growth. You've had
stock market continued all-time highs,
really, really well, and you've had a labor market that, particularly in 21-22, was the hottest it's ever been in terms of people job hopping. The argument could be made that some of wages were eaten up by inflation. We'll get to that in just a moment. But great labor market, great stock market, and GDP growth that has been quite strong as well. Those are all the positive economic indicators that you can point to in what's been a pretty good period, though it hasn't felt good the whole time.
Nonetheless, when you ask people via surveys how they feel about the economy, the answers are pretty overwhelmingly negative. And yes, it's partisan.
Yes.
But it's pretty negative regardless of political affiliation also. You had one survey recently that was 90% of Democrats responding negatively, 55% of Republicans responding negatively. And so to some degree, we've largely taken a look at these surveys over the course of the last few years and just had to put our hands down and say, I don't know if this matters anymore. I don't know that these surveys really give us a representation of. It might give us a representation of how people feel, but clearly over the last few years has not given us any indication whatsoever of what people do.
Right.
And that's, if you're an investor, that's what you care about.
Money talks.
Am I so dour and negative on the economy that I'm going to stop going to restaurants? Am I so negative that I am going to save a much larger percentage of my paycheck so that I don't get laid off? Those would be really indicative things about where the economy is going to go. And in spite of the way that everybody's responded to these things, it has meant nothing. Whether it's the Michigan Sentiment Survey that's been around since the 60s, or a number of the ones that are mentioned here on, where was this one done? Conference Board was another one. The Wall Street Journal just did another survey. And again, all of this finding, just not a lot of hiring, not a lot of outlook for the economy, and a real souring on the idea that the American dream still exists.
Right.
And that's pretty earth-shattering to me. In one specific way, I keep asking myself with this question, and Chuck's brought it up before too. If you could be born in any country in the world right now for solely the prospects of economic mobility, right? Like, if I'm going to be born into the lowest class of any country, where would I be born? And I really do hesitate to come up with a single country other than the United States that I would prefer.
I would too.
But clearly, with things like the cost of housing, clearly with job prospects for younger Americans, and all sorts of other, inflation over the last several years, people are very, very negative on this economy. My problem still is I don't know what to do with that information.
No, ultimately, there has to be some proof that sentiment matches behavior, to your point earlier.
Yeah.
And it hasn't. The U.S. consumer has continued to get out there and spend. Maybe you can make the argument that it's really reflecting the bifurcation in the economy that we've talked about this stat before. More higher income Americans are more responsible for the consumer spending across this country.
The specific statistic that we've referred to more than once, and I should pull the source on it, but top 10% of income earners in the U.S. right now
50%
are accounting for 50% of total spending.
Right. So perhaps it is more a reflection of that the bigger numbers point to the consumer still spending, but perhaps that other 90% of income earners, maybe they aren't feeling as well or spending as well. But overall, the way that companies have performed, it's hard to make that claim entirely. And what we learned over the last 5 years is with inflation rearing its head, it is truly the one thing that upsets sentiment the most, I feel like, outside of job loss, probably.
We've talked about this before, but I'll make this point that inflation affects these numbers really poorly because everyone responds to inflation.
Yeah, not everyone.
In the worst unemployment scenarios that we get, certainly, if I lose my job, I'm going to be way more negative on one of these surveys than I would be with 2022 inflation if I were still working. Like, you put yourself in that position, like, okay, it really sucks that all my prices have gone way up, but I do still have a job and I'm able to put food on the table for my family. The problem with how that all works out is in the worst recessions that we've been through, maybe 1 in 10 people has lost their job. So, that is the way that these surveys go. And frankly, it's just been a very long time since we've experienced a time period like this with price uncertainty like we've been delivered over the last 5 years. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, playing a little bit of trivia for you here next on the Financial Exchange.
The Financial Exchange is now available every day from 11 to noon on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. Stay informed about the latest from Wall Street, fiscal policy, and breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is live on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served for nearly 20 years, and we are so thrilled to have him and his company as a key partner and the presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Mark comes from a proud military family, including his father Victor and his brother Timmy. Mark talks often about how serving his country was one of the greatest achievements of his life, and that's one of the key reasons that he chooses to give back to this special community. Mark is honored to continue his legacy that his father started when he built Veterans Development Corporation. Working to help many disabled veterans and their families has become a lifelong goal for Mark, and it's why he's taken the time to fully support the DAV Department of Massachusetts. You can join Mark Vonner and Veterans Development Corporation and help our great American heroes today by making a donation or becoming a sponsor. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Every dollar you've saved in retirement accounts and life insurance tells a story of hard work, smart choices, and the future you envision for your family. One way to help that story end well is to make a beneficiary choice that does more. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and Life Insurance Planning, Estate Tax Strategies and Nursing Home Protection, explains how naming your estate as the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can add a layer of tax efficiency and nursing home protection, while still allowing your spouse access when it matters. It's about keeping more of what you've built working for your loved ones now and in the years to come. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request it online from our website, LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
If you missed any of today's show, catch up whenever you want on our YouTube page. Find daily show segments and full shows. Just go to youtube.com and search for The Financial Exchange. This is your home for breaking business and financial news. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, time for trivia here on the Financial Exchange, and we have a new trivia theme this week. We're going to go with famous Bens throughout history here. In our week-long look at famous Bens, begins with Massachusetts native Ben Affleck. Trivia question today: what was the name of the 2013 Best Picture winner that Ben Affleck directed and starred in? Once again, what was the name of the 2013 Best Picture winner that Ben Affleck directed and starred in? Be the sixth person today to text us at 617-362-1385 with the correct answer. You win a Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. Once again, the sixth correct response to text us to the number 617-362-1385 will win that t-shirt. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
Paul, we've got a piece in the Wall Street Journal today about stocks being the priciest, at least by one measure, that they have ever been. Fitting for a day when the stocks are selling off by more than a percentage point across the board. But we have made, on this show, we have made comparisons to this moment in time and the dot-com bubble. And the valuation piece of it is just another part of that comparison to the AI-driven rally of today versus the dot-com-driven rally of the past. And I just wonder at how to read into this. So specifically, the metric that they're looking at here is not the price-to-earnings ratio. That is still not quite as high as it was during the dot-com era, but the price-to-sales ratio today on the S&P 500 is higher than it has ever been. So what you're talking about here is take a look at the price of every stock compared to the total value of all of their gross sales, and you are pricier right now than you were during that dot-com era. What is one to make of all of this, do you think?
It goes back to the usual conversation that we have with valuations, that over the longer term, they are a better predictor of, they can be a better predictor of future returns, but over the shorter term, you can't really draw much from the fact that the S&P 500 is trading at a pricier level at this point. In terms of the numbers here, there's no question, if you look at many different valuation metrics, the market's more expensive. As a counter-argument, you could perhaps say that maybe the earnings growth and productivity that's going to be driven by these technological advancements will bring those valuations down. That would be the argument to be made. Or you could make the argument that things have gotten overextended and perhaps investors should brace for a decade where they don't earn as strongly as they have over the past 10 years.
One of the big differences that has been pointed out during this rally is precisely what this reflects, which is in the dot-com era, you had a bunch of really unprofitable companies getting their stock prices bid up. And maybe they were profitable, maybe they were unprofitable, but Pets.com gets referred to all the time. These companies that barely were in existence and put .com in their name and got a big price boost. That's not what's really happened in this rally. Instead, you've had some of the most profitable and literally one of the most profitable companies in the history of the world, I believe, that being Google, getting their stocks bid up. And so that price-to-earnings ratio has not been back to where it was during the dot-com bubble. But the price that you're paying for every dollar of revenue that these companies generate is higher than it has ever been for the S&P 500. We did get a text a week ago that I never got to. I don't know if you guys did, but somebody texted the show, said, have you guys discussed ever the impact of an AI bubble burst on the economy? Just curious if it holds enough weight to have a significant impact. My answer would be, if it resembled anything like the dot-com bubble burst, then yes, it would be enough to have a significant impact on the economy. You have so many people that are so leveraged right now when it comes to their portfolios. You have so many people that I think are continuing to spend and continuing to feel wealthy because of the values of their stock portfolio that, yeah, if you had an AI bubble burst and suddenly the valuations of companies like NVIDIA and Microsoft and others came crashing down, would that be enough to result in a genuine effect on the economy? Yes. And there's genuine economic activity right now that's taking place because of the bets on AI, right? All the data center construction, all this stuff that is second order to the stock prices, I think could be affected by something.
It's
like
a fantastic question to pose, and it's right on the mark. I undoubtedly agree with this proposition out there, because if you look at the capital expenditures of some of these big hyperscalers, which are the names, the Googles, the Microsofts, these others, they're spending each upwards of $100 billion, $85 to $100 billion a year on building out data centers and developing their capabilities on AI. If that gets pulled, you've got hundreds of billions of dollars of CapEx that's being trickled out through the economy, that's being pulled out. And then, oh, by the way, those companies, in terms of their weighting in the S&P 500, not all of them are pure AI plays, to be clear, but a lot of the enthusiasm around the Magnificent Seven which makes up a weighting of close to a third of the S&P 500, if that is taken away because there is some skepticism on AI's future profitability, if there's some big hit that is taken to AI, between the lesser capex going forward and just the valuation hit that these companies would take, yeah, definitely it could result in a pullback. Not to mention a lot of smaller names that have been riding the coattails of this momentum would probably go down with it. But it would have to be a seismic shift in the future optimism around AI that would cause that. But a great question.
So this story on price to sales, as with many others that we've covered, I think my conclusion is it does not spell a great deal of optimism that I would have for the next decade in the stock market. It also tells me nothing about anything timing related. It does not tell me whether or not we're in a bubble right now. It does not tell, I think, anybody anything discernible about what to do with their portfolio today. I think it's just a story of, hey, things have to go really, really well for companies to fit into these very pricey valuations that they are being bid up to right now. And so will we see that revolution from AI that is being promised? Right. Will we see these companies able to genuinely save a lot of costs and innovate new, inventive products that nobody has been able to dream of before on the heels of AI, like was done with the internet? And even if it does happen, will we have a bubble burst in between then and now?
Yeah, there's a great quote in one of these pieces. I'm forgetting which one it was, but the economic rally, it doesn't die of old age, it dies by homicide. I thought that was a good way of putting it. It's something that you don't anticipate that comes in and really slashes valuations that we can't even foresee today.
We've got to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got your trivia winner and a full look at Wall Street today with the sell-off. That's next on the Financial Exchange.
Bringing the latest financial news straight to your radio every day. It's the Financial Exchange on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. One of the biggest risks to retirement isn't just market volatility, it's longevity. People are living 25 to 30 years after they stop working, and that gives inflation plenty of time to work against you. At just 3% inflation, your expenses double in about 23 years. Add to that the fact that healthcare costs typically rise faster than general inflation, and your later years could be your most expensive. Without a plan, that combination can put real pressure on your savings. That's why we've put together a brand new guide called Inflation in Your Retirement Plan. The guide shows you ways to balance longevity risk with rising costs and strategies that may help you make your money last through decades of retirement. Call 800-393-4001 to get your free copy today. 800-393-4001, or you can request it online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. This fall, why just watch the leaves change when you could watch the sunset over turquoise waters? The U.S. Virgin Islands are your perfect fall escape. Set sail on the sparkling blue sea, snorkel colorful reefs, kayak through calm lagoons, or try to reel in the big one with world-class sport fishing. Then, explore Charlotte Amalie, the capital of St. Thomas, with its historic streets and duty-free shopping. Ferry to St. John's Virgin Islands National Park for hiking and secluded beaches. And finally, experience the culture, festivals, and rum of St. Croix. 3 incredible islands, countless experiences, and something for everyone to enjoy. With easy travel from New England, no passport required for U.S. citizens, and no money to exchange, paradise is closer than you think. So why wait? This can be the season you fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands in America's Caribbean. The U.S. Virgin Islands. Plan your getaway now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
Mark Vonner is the CEO of Veterans Development Corporation. Mark is a career military man, having served nearly 20 years, and we are so proud to have him and his business as a key partner and a presenting sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. The DAV Department of Massachusetts does incredible work, and it's one of the first organizations that Mark became familiar with after his military service ended back in 1984. As Mark built his company, he knew he'd be giving back to fellow veterans who needed jobs, support services, services, medical supplies, and so much more. Mark works with disabled veterans every day, and it's one of the key reasons why he's such a big supporter of Dan Stack, the DAV Department of Massachusetts, and the DAV 5K Boston. You can join Mark Vonner and his team and make a donation to the DAV Department of Massachusetts or become a sponsor of the DAV 5K Boston. Simply visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutzke, a partner with the law firm of Cushing & Dolan with a master's in taxation. And today we're talking about choosing beneficiaries for your IRA. Todd, what is the best way to set up designated beneficiaries for qualified plan assets from both a Medicaid and estate tax planning perspective for a married couple?
Generally, for a married couple, you have several choices. The most commonly used one is you're going to make the surviving spouse the designated beneficiary. It doesn't shelter assets from estate taxes. It just passes to the surviving spouse. It avoids probate, and it's probably the best way to go from an income tax perspective, not necessarily an estate tax perspective. Another way would be you could technically name the trust the beneficiary of the IRA when you pass. That at least will help it shelter assets for estate tax purposes and still provide for the surviving spouse. But from a Medicaid perspective, it will then protect it from the nursing home, but it'll take 5 years. Perhaps the newest and best way to do this would be to name the estate the beneficiary, provided you are over age 73 or over. That way, it goes through probate into the will. It is sheltered for estate taxes. It is immediately protected from the cost of long-term care for the surviving spouse, and the surviving spouse has access to it as well.
Educate yourself about the estate planning process. Request your free copy of Todd's brand new guide, Why Name Your Estate an IRA Beneficiary, right now by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request a copy from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and/or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Time now for Wall Street Watch. A complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Markets are starting off the month of September by selling off amid more tariff confusion after an appeals court struck down the administration's reciprocal tariffs late last week. Investors are also waiting a court ruling on whether Trump's bid to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook is legitimate. And on top of all of that, we'll have a jobs report on Friday this week. Right now, the Dow is down by over 1% or 485 points. S&P 500 is down 1.3% or 85 points. And the NASDAQ down 1.6% or 354 points. Russell 2000 is down just over 1%. 10-year Treasury yield up 5 basis points now at 4.279%. And crude oil is jumping 2% higher. Trading at $65.32 a barrel. According to the Wall Street Journal, activist investor Elliott Management has built a roughly $4 billion stake in Pepsi and plans to push the beverage and snacks company to make changes to boost its sagging share price. Meanwhile, Kraft Heinz confirmed earlier reports that it would split into 2 publicly traded companies through a tax-free spinoff. Berkshire Hathaway's Warren Buffett told CNBC this morning that he is disappointed in the Kraft Heinz split, as Berkshire was behind the merger back in 2015. Kraft Heinz shares are down now by over 6%. Elsewhere, shares in Signet Jewelers up nearly 1% after it reported better than expected second quarter results and also upped its full year earnings guidance. Constellation Brands down now over 7% after the maker of Modelo and Corona cut its full year guidance. And gold miner Newmont is up by about 2% after the precious metal hit a fresh record high. I'm Tucker Silva, and that is Wall Street Watch. And in the previous segment, we asked you the trivia question. What was the name of the 2013 Best Picture winner that Ben Affleck directed and starred in? That would be Argo. Brian from Attleboro, Mass. Yes, is our winner today, taking home a Financial Exchange Show T-shirt. Congrats to Brian. We play trivia every day here in the Financial Exchange. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
We had another text earlier during the show about tariffs that I think is worth reading. If you want to text the show, you can do that too by texting 617-362-1385, or you can have Tucker's personal cell phone. Tucker, what's that number again?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, almost got him. I felt like I almost had him there.
Get my social
too, please.
Yeah. No problem.
From the earlier texter, the point behind the tariffs is that ultimately it's better for the American people. Yes, people will be unhappy in the short term. However, businesses and business people are constantly changing their models to adapt to the economy and new opportunities and changes. They will do that in this case. First, they will make their suppliers eat the cost. Then they will eat some of the costs. Then they will change the business model and find suppliers in different countries. In the meantime, they will complain about it. I think some of those things are accurate. And what it comes back down to for me is the ultimate goal of these tariffs. And that's where I'm a little bit confused from this text message too, because I've heard a few things about the ultimate goal of the tariffs. One of them has been to bring a majority of the manufacturing that we do of goods back into the United States. And no, India is not good enough in that case. Canada, Mexico is not good enough in that case. We want it done here. The texter acknowledges in this case that, yeah, they're going to go to different countries, not necessarily the United States in this case. And does that ultimately end up being better for Americans if it moves from China to Vietnam, for example, or Malaysia to India? I don't have a good answer to those questions. Is it instead the real end goal to raise revenue so that we can cut income taxes? We're seeing some of that this year. The tariffs have raised a lot of revenue. They haven't really brought a ton of jobs back, and I don't think most companies are ready to do that in this case, both because of uncertainty and just because of the level of the tariffs rates themselves, right? You can probably pay a 30% tariff on Chinese-made products and still produce it cheaper in China than you can in the United States. So to me, I guess my personal opinion doesn't matter. My personal opinion, though, is that it's just unclear to me how much tariffs do or don't benefit the United States in the long term. I think others are much more convinced of that, and I'm open to that argument. What I think the texter and I can agree on is the president's powers of these tariffs now being largely in question as to whether or not they will still be out there leads to a whole ton of uncertainty.
Sure. I agree with the sentiment about businesses changing and adapting. Of course,
they always do.
That's always the case, and I would never disagree with that notion at all. You have to.
It's the same argument I would use for when people tell me, Trump got elected, I can't be in the stock market, or Biden got elected, or Obama got elected. You got to get me out. My argument is always, look, companies are very good at navigating all sorts of changes to administrations and businesses and policy. Don't worry about who the president is.
Right.
That's not relevant. And that's the same argument I make with tariffs. Companies find ways to succeed.
What we can all agree on is that we need certainty going forward as to what the economic playing field is going to look like.
Yes.
And we sit here today 5 months in, and I know less about where tariffs are going to be than I did on April 2nd. It's just so hard. I'm being
maybe
facetious.
An exaggeration, but
you know what I
get
mean.
it.
If this gets reversed, then I really will have no clue at all. But the point being that ultimately there's two reasons that have been mentioned as to why these tariffs will be beneficial for the economy: bring back manufacturing to the United States and raising revenue. And to me, on the raising revenue side, I'm all for that. If it's going to be utilized to offset the spending pattern that we're on as a country, I'm there. I'm with it. But you have to look at the numbers in terms of the recent tax bill being passed. It's not going to be a dollar for dollar offset on the increased spending on the tax side of things there, that the tariffs will cover all of the potential debt that's going to be added from these lower tax rates going forward. I would have rather seen we move in the same direction. Okay, raise revenue from tariffs, but then cut expenses at the same time. Then to me, you have a compelling argument from a budgetary standpoint that, hey, you're dropping down the cost of things. On the manufacturing side, we're not going to know the answer to that for years as to whether or not this is going to bring more manufacturing to the United States. And people just have to be aware that with bringing things to the United States, the manufacturing, the cost of goods will go up, and there's a lot of specialization that goes into manufacturing that I don't think everyone is aware of on a sector-to-sector basis.
All said and done, we can all have an intelligent debate about whether or not tariffs will or won't be good. What I think is probably not good is the uncertainty around where they're going to land, and we just got a big dose of that on Friday afternoon when this court ruled against the White House. So we will see where things go in the second half of the last 4 months of this year, and when it comes to these tariffs. But I think what we're seeing in markets today is an admission of more uncertainty. If you are staring down this market right now and we're heading into September with a sell-off and you're trying to formulate what your investment strategy looks like for the rest of this year. Maybe you are at a big turning point in life. Maybe you've started a new job, ended a job, a career, heading down to that retirement path, and you have questions about your investment and financial strategy for the future. Give the folks at Armstrong Advisory Group a call so we can lend you some degree of certainty when it comes to your strategy. The number is 800-393-4001. Again, that's the number for the Armstrong Advisory Group. You can reach us at 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
A band of retail investors powered the meme stock rally, and now they're taking different steps here. And I just have to say, this is reason 1,000 why small companies and any companies prefer to stay private rather than going public these days, and why there are so few publicly traded companies out there, which is a phenomenon we've talked about before. But a company called Open Door Technologies got looped into the meme stock rally earlier this year. Stock went up 10x. And then these investors, as they've done on a number of different occasions, when that CEO did something that did not sit well with them, pretty successfully forced out that CEO. Effectively, in one of the earnings calls, they were looking for the CEO to announce some big hope for a strategy turnaround, perhaps a pivot to artificial intelligence. For those that aren't familiar, Open Door is a company that buys houses, so I'm not sure how the turn to AI was going to be successful for them. She did not commit to any big turn there, and so there's a big movement to fire the CEO, Carrie Wheeler. The board ended up doing so, and I guess I don't know where I really land on this. To one degree, this is one of the points of markets, is to have investors buy and sell companies with an intent of making change. That's activist investor 101. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, it does seem like investors are digging in, some investors anyway, really digging in on issues that don't really seem core to a lot of these businesses. And they're walking a delicate game now of, hurting investors' feelings about decisions that CEOs are making. The Cracker Barrel example is another one. And look, I don't think it was a good idea to change the Cracker Barrel logo, but I also didn't expect investors to get as upset about it as they did and move that stock price around. And maybe this is just the lesson of 2020 is, you suddenly now have a whole bunch of investors who have opinions and previously didn't have investor experience. And they got a whole lot of it back in 2020 and 2021 when there wasn't any gambling to be done or other forms of entertainment.
The last 5 years, the retail trader frenzy has produced wonderful content for the show. First of all,
thank you.
In terms of all the meme stock rally, I'll never forget the GameStop days, and nothing like it today, obviously. But still, there's pockets of the market that have this out there. The amount of retail trading and just how accessible it is for everyone to be participants in the markets. This is some of the byproducts of that, and there's going to be success stories, and there's probably going to be a lot of failures come from this too. But ultimately, for what we talk about on a daily basis, which is largely the S&P 500 companies, you have such large sizes that if they want to do this hypothetically with Apple, these retail investors know you can't move the needle there. So it remains a fascinating subplot of the market.
But buyer beware with this as an investment strategy, because it does seem to me like a lot of these people are oftentimes not doing it to make any sort of long-term money.
Yes.
It might be to make short-term money. It might be to make short-term bets, but oftentimes it seems the strategy is much more about short-term, and that's very different from a lot of investors' overall strategy. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, Stack Roulette here on the Financial Exchange.
The Financial Exchange is live on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132, weekdays from 11 to noon. Get the latest business and financial news from across the country and around the world, and keep up to date on how it might affect your wallet. That's the Financial Exchange, weekdays from 11 to noon on SiriusXM's Business Radio Channel 132. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network. New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We focus on the people returning from service, not their specific illness or injury. Our number one goal is to make sure our veterans have the necessary services they need, be it physical, emotional, or financial, so that their transition can be seamless. You can help our great American heroes as well by making a donation today by visiting dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Are you wondering where the economy is headed? GDP is growing, but tariffs, inflation, and job numbers are making headlines. Interest rates, housing costs, and policy changes are impacting all of us. Even AI is changing how markets move. Hi, this is Chuck Zodda from the Armstrong Advisory Group. We're hosting 2 financial seminars this fall to help you make sense of it all. Join us at Margaritaville Resort, Cape Cod on October 9th or at the Showcase Superlux in Chestnut Hill on October 16th. To reserve your seat, call 800-393-4001. We'll break down the economic trends, market risks, and smart strategies you need to plan for retirement and beyond. Diversification, preparation, and smart decisions are several of the keys to navigating uncertainty. Register today by calling 800-393-4001 or on our website, armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. Your retirement savings and life insurance benefits are more than numbers. They're part of the legacy you've worked hard to build. And with the right plan, you can help protect them for the people you love. This month's free guide from Cushing & Dolan, IRA and life insurance planning, estate tax strategies, and nursing home protection shows how naming your estate the beneficiary of your IRA or life insurance can help reduce estate taxes and protect assets from nursing home costs, and still give your spouse access when it's needed most. It's a straightforward strategy that can provide lasting benefits for you and your family. You'll learn how this approach can fit into your overall estate plan and why it may offer more flexibility than other options. Get your free copy today by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699. Or request the guide online right now at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Dolan and Armstrong Advisory do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, Dazed is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up because we have something better,
stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
Find daily interviews and full shows of the Financial Exchange on our YouTube page. Subscribe to our page and get caught up on anything and everything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This segment of the Financial Exchange is brought to you by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Tourism. Looking for a getaway that's easy, warm, and unforgettable? Discover the magic of the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. Just a short flight from New England with no passport needed and no money to exchange. Soak up the sun, stroll along white sand beaches, and feel the rhythm of the heartbeat of the islands. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Plan your fall escape now at visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
I will kick things off for our Stack Roulette here, Paul. We've got a columnist piece in Bloomberg. Stablecoins are coming for your rewards points. And I would really genuinely like, if anybody's listening right now and feels like they have a really good grasp on stablecoins, to tell me where I'm wrong here. But here's my brief understanding of the direction that stablecoins seem to be going. A number of different retailers are considering rolling out stablecoins. Credit card companies are doing the same as well. And here is the promise. You will have let's use Amazon as an example because it's the easiest. You will have a Amazon issued stablecoin that is pegged to the US dollar, that is easily transferable between your Amazon stablecoin and dollars, is backed by something at Amazon, and you will be able to use those stablecoins to make purchases, receive purchases if you're a vendor on there, and do so without Amazon needing to pay exorbitant credit card fees and processing times with money movement and all sorts of stuff like that. To which I say, great, and yeah, that could be really disruptive to a bunch of banks and Visa and payment networks and hopefully bring down costs of transactions for people. But isn't it just a slightly more technologically advanced gift card in that case?
Yes.
I mean, like, what is different here?
Yeah, and I'll go further with that. Yes, that's part of it, and it's important for listeners to understand every time that you're swiping a card at these vendors out there, Visa and MasterCard are making money from what's called interchange fees. That basically the merchant, if I pay $100 at a store for some item, they're not getting all the $100 of that. Visa and MasterCard, for the network they provide, are taking a cut in between. Now, that can be anywhere from 1.5% to 3%, depending on how it's negotiated. They don't get all of that money. A lot of it gets offered back to me in form of rewards points. So if you have a credit card out there, a Chase Sapphire or whatever the case may be, and you get 2% cash back or whatever the offer is, they're giving some of it back to you there, and usually they're taking maybe 0.25% on all transaction volume, the VIG on anything that you spend using these cards. Obviously, Amazon and Walmart and all these other would love a boost of 2 or 3% on their margins to not have to pay that.
You can be sure that Amazon's not paying 2 to 3%.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah. They're way too big. But how do you convince me, Paul Lane, who is his family is a big Amazon shopper, the 5% cash back that I get on our Amazon card? Where does that fit into the stablecoins here? Because right now you have to convince me that it's better to go with stablecoins than the current way of getting my 3 to 5% cash back in different varying offers.
I feel like I'm missing some piece of this, but the more it gets explained to me, the more I'm like, yeah, that's it.
Someone make the argument, and the only way that they're going to be able to get people to do this is you're going to have to, as the retailers, really offer some incentives to get me on the platform to do it.
And you have to be big enough that I trust you.
Right.
Like, I have to trust that my Amazon stablecoin is still going to be worth $1 3 years from now.
Yeah. And they're going to have to give the that percentage back is going to have to be a real lucrative award to the end consumer.
So I guess if you're Amazon, you can invest the funds like a treasury and make money like a bank does.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, all of this I see is basically Amazon realizing that, okay, now I have to get regulated like a bank, and I'm not sure I want to do that.
The other great point that's made in this Bloomberg piece is that, that sounds great when interest rates on money markets are 4%, but if they come back down to 0, then you have more of an uphill battle. Tesla will derive 80% of its value from Optimus, according to Elon Musk, very strategically de-emphasizing his Tesla car business and saying that in the future, the company will derive 80% of its value from Optimus, the robot initiative. Musk predicted that
I'm going to be 6'3" by next year, Paul. Did you know that?
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
That's tremendous.
It's going to be really impressive.
It's going to help your hockey game.
Yeah.
It's a classic strategic move by Musk of emphasizing things that are on longer timelines. And I don't want to discourage it because he's made some tremendous inroads in some businesses out there. But
stock is down 1.8% today. So
selling cars has been their business.
My question is, can Elon still move his company stock, given everyone he's pissed off in the same way that he used to be able to? That's all the time we have for today, folks, but we will be right back at it tomorrow here on the Financial Exchange. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you then.